but they don't even do that. The parents are also racially ambiguous, so you're just like, all right, man, I just
We
don't
are
know.
human.
Right, we are your standard human.
We are standard
Have
human.
you ever seen that?
Hello, this is Your Favorite Movie is Racist. I'm Chris,
I'm Tawny.
I'm Miles.
and this is a show where we talk about our favorite movies and explore the things about them that are a little less comfortable to talk about. So this time we're talking about our first kids movie and our first Disney movie, The Princess and the Frog. The Princess and the Frog came out in 2009. It was directed by John Musker and Ron Clements. And this is also our first animated film. So, a lot of firsts. And this movie really encapsulates a lot of firsts for Disney, which is what makes it special. We'll just dive into what we think is great about The Princess and the Frog.
Okay, so the first thing that I just want to say, because I'm pretty sure I'm the only one who noticed it, is that Tiana has the best Disney princess dress. There's no dress that's better. It's the best one. It looks like a lily pad. It's beautiful. It's green. It looks beautiful on her brown skin. It sounds dumb, but like every time I see that dress, I'm like, I want that dress. But no, I think it's obviously very important to note that this was a big deal for Black representation in such a huge, entertainment juggernaut as Disney, coming from Disney. So there's that. I remember, I think probably a year or two after it came out, I went to a Halloween party, and there was somebody I know who was there with her kids, and she was dressed as Mama Odie, and the little kids, like one of them was dressed as the Firefly, Rufus, and it was just like they did a whole like theme, and I was just, at the time I was living in Baldwin Hills, which I don't know if you're Baldwin Hills is a historically Black neighborhood in Los Angeles, and all the way on the west side near Culver City. And I was just at the time like, being bombarded by like, oh my God, I did never realize this. Oh my God, I never realized that. Like there was this huge education, and and I hadn't really paid attention to the movie. Like it came out, and at the time I just wasn't going to the movies a lot. And so I didn't make an effort to like go see it in theaters. And I remember thinking like, this is a big deal. Like this is the first Black, like you could point to and say that she's wearing a tiara and a big old puffy dress. She's a Black Disney princess, and that's important. Also, I want to note there's some fantastic music in this movie. Fantastic music. I love Keith David. I really just everything he ever is in, I enjoy. And that freaking voice of his,
Oh my God.
there's something, man. But those are my big, and my kids like it. They truly, it's a fun movie. Some fun characters. Not my favorite of all time. Not even close to that. But solid. Overall. So those are my pluses, I guess.
My favorite thing about this movie is like Ray, the lightning bug. I think his name is Ray. Is his name Ray? Like,
Yeah,
it's
Ray.
it's just so ridiculous.
Raymond. But call me
Raymond,
Ray.
right? It's just so
Yeah.
ridiculous. Like it's just such a obnoxious, like it's a fun character. Like he's so over the
Yeah.
top and like unrealistic and like just such a podunk, like southern, like I don't know what the hell he's
Cajun.
supposed to be.
He's
Yeah,
a
he's just
magical Cajun.
yeah, he's got like whiskers and everything. Like he's just I don't know, like I just like that character a lot. Like honestly, like if I'm showing my hand, like I don't really like this movie that much. But what I will say about it is the representation part of it is important because like before that, I remember my daughter was like really she was like maybe 3 maybe when this came out. I can't remember, but she's pretty young. And like when this came out, we did make a big deal. Like, and we tried to when it came out, and I think we bought it for her, and we kind of just played. It was like showing her, like, hey, look, this is the Tiana, like trying to show her, like, hey, she's pretty, right? She's like she's fun. Like she's just as interesting as like all the other characters. Like just trying to like get her to see like some other type of representation. I think the humor works in this movie. I found myself laughing a lot actually in this movie. Like the humor works. Um, it's like throughout we were like me and my daughter were watching it and like even maybe stuff that we maybe weren't supposed to laugh at either. Like we found like comedy in. So like I think the humor holds up. I think the that character specifically is he's incredible. Like his story is sweet because he's like his the was it his wife or girlfriend, I can't remember, like
Evangeline.
Evangeline, like that like died and became this star. Like he has like this like super dope ass like storyline like behind him. Like there's definitely stuff there I dig for sure.
Yeah, this movie holds a special place with my family too. I mean, the representation, obviously, I remember um, it being sort of a big moment, you know. It's kind of sad that it was a big moment if you think about it, but it was a big moment, right? And I remember when my younger boys watched it for the first time, um, there was this like pretty strong connection for them to the characters. My oldest son loves Facilier. Like he just thinks he's the coolest villain in Disney, period.
The
Like
Shadow
full
Man.
stop. The Shadow Man, yeah. And he wants to play him. He wants, my oldest son's an actor. He wants to play him. He wants to, he sings the Friends on the Other Side song all the time. He loves that song. And to echo you, Tawny, like Keith David is like that.
Yeah.
He is this like he is the best like snaky dude. You know what I mean? Like he's just got that smooth kind of
He's so
delivery to
good.
everything,
And
and he doesn't get talked about in the same way that like James Earl Jones and Morgan Freeman and those other iconic voices do, but he has an iconic voice for
Yeah, he
sure.
does.
Absolutely.
You just
Yeah.
know him when you hear him. You know him. I knew his
Yep.
voice before I knew his name.
I
I
never
was
knew
like,
his
oh, that's the
name.
one dude. That's
Yeah.
the
That's the one.
Yeah.
yeah. He's that dude. Full stop. And then the animation. So like this is one of the last. I don't know if it's the last, but it's definitely one of the last kind of really big, sort of bigger budget Disney 2D animated films. And I really love the animation. Every time I see the movie, I'm reminded how much I love it. Like when they're dancing on the lily pad and all the flowers kind of light up, or when she does the song at the beginning about the Almost There song, and it sort of changed, the animation style changes.
I love that
All these
song.
things that to me like make it art, and it's all art. It's always art, but like Disney could easily become a factory, you know what I mean? And in a lot of ways it has. And so I love when a director or a team can sort of put its stamp on a movie through the design, the character design, and the animation, and so that really stands out to me. The music, honestly, like I think there's overall, I like to hear the music, but it doesn't stick with me the same way most Disney songs do. Um, Now, again, my son feels differently, so that's
That's how my daughter was. She was like, I love these songs. I was like, I don't like any of these songs. Like, I like the first Tiana song. Like, I like that. I
almost
like,
there.
yeah,
Yeah.
Almost There is like maybe my favorite song. I like this. I don't like the song by Ray. Like, I just like him, so I'm
I love it so
involved.
much.
Like, I'm just with it because I like that character.
The songs are by Randy Newman, right?
Oh, were they?
I think so.
That makes
Yeah,
sense.
let me make sure.
Almost There, that big time, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, sounds like Randy Newman.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
so I like that. I love that song. The boys and I have this big old Disney playlist that we listen to. And from Princess and the Frog, we have that one, Evangeline, and Friends on the Other Side, and Mama Odie's song, which is like probably most of the songs at this point on the soundtrack.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, you're jamming to this soundtrack.
This was like before everybody was like super ultra fake woke. Like this was like kind of the inception of everybody being
Yeah.
woke.
Yeah.
And it was a different time, like compared to now, where I feel like Disney leans into that hard now. Like, hey,
They have
listen,
been.
we
Yeah.
will, we're gonna let Beyonce do this whole album. Like, we're
Right.
Oh
gonna
yeah,
let
that's true. That's right.
Kendrick is gonna
Hmm.
do the entire Black Panther soundtrack. It's like, and we're just gonna let him do what he's gonna do. And obviously, it's two different soundtracks, but they lean into it hard now, where they like, we're not gonna tell because we're not gonna give you guys what you should and shouldn't do. Like what the vibe is for what this is. I feel like they lean into that more.
And I think that there's pros and cons to that. I mean, like, I think the fact that this movie came out before that, this kind of the era that we're in now, actually helps it in some ways. I could see a world where if that movie came out this year, it would definitely be Beyonce voicing Tiana, and cool. But like, I like that I'm hearing voices that aren't, literally everywhere
Hmm.
in this film.
I
And I also like the the thing about Tiana that I feel like, because we're gonna get into the complicated feelings I definitely have about her character and what was done with her character, but I actually think that Tiana is one of the more layered Disney princesses.
hmm
She feels like a fleshed out character who has an arc. She's not kind of just there to be saved, and she's also not there to get married, or she's not there to
until she
be
is.
just.
I know, right?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, like right, and like
Yeah.
she's not there strictly to oppose being married too. In
Yeah.
in the case of like a Jasmine or somebody like that,
Absolutely. That
where her
that
whole mindset is still tied to like
Her
to
goal.
be
goal.
with a guy or not, you know?
Yeah, I kind of actually wanted more of that. I was like, I wish we had more establishing of her, being what she is, because that's the most significant thing about her is that she's not a princess. Number one,
Hmm.
she is
She does not
someone
want
who,
to be. She's not
yeah,
trying to
she's not
be.
trying
Yeah.
to be like, that's what her. And the funny thing is, like, the best friend is like what we would typically, think of as like the princess role, which obviously is on purpose. And the juxtaposition of those characters, she's like, the friend is thirsty, like she's super thirsty, like to find a
Hmm.
man and be married. And even like Chris, you saying like about the line like the mom says as far as like her finding a man, the mom came in and like, when you gonna have some kids? Like, when you gonna bring me some grandbabies? Like, that's totally like a culture. So I suppose I get it. It's more like when it's directed at like a young woman, though. It's like, all right, like, so you're just gonna make her like
You
that's
know,
all she's worth. It's like,
I think, and I think which I agree with what you guys are both like. There's something that feels a little bit unearned about who she, like, what we're supposed to admire about her. Like, we're told and sort of shown we get some exposition, we get a little bit of background, but it doesn't feel. It feels like we're expected to draw this conclusion about her and have these feelings about her that aren't quite earned by the movie. Like, and I don't
Hmm.
know if that, like, maybe this was the wrong fairy tale to sort of use for this. For this, I don't know what would be the right one, but there's something about it that doesn't feel like it's really like it's like being told instead of shown.
The one thing, the other thing I'll say, because I think we're gonna have to shift into the meat of this, but the other thing I really did like, and we kind of started to get there, but I wanted to just speak it, which was that she never wanted to be a princess. And at the end of the movie, what I really loved was that even me as a viewer forgot that she was a princess until she realized it.
mm,
And when they kiss and she's like, oh, because I'm a princess. Like I like that, because it just the princess thing sunk so far into the background in that moment that it was a nice it was a nice way to sort of backdoor it in a way, instead of it being the goal in any kind of way, or it just, you forget about it. And I thought that was pretty well executed, and like obviously like getting to see some of the the plot threads didn't really makes sense to me towards the end. But
Yeah,
Like the
same
her
here.
as a
alligator playing jazz
yeah.
band, maybe? Like,
Well, in like the whole thing of yeah, we don't have to. I'm trying to say with greatness, y'all. Look,
I know. I feel bad because I feel
no,
like we kind of got into
no,
parts that
no.
aren't great. But you just said a
but
good point where that I didn't even think
yeah,
about. Where that is a good. I didn't take it that way of like her, like the princess like aspect of it, where she wasn't really. Again, it harkens back to like she's not trying to be. She doesn't care about being a princess. That is not significant to her at the beginning of the movie. It's not significant to her at the end of the movie. It's almost just sort of like, oh yeah, I'm a princess. Like that's cool. But ultimately,
And
for
I still
me,
got a lot of work to do. Yeah, so
yeah, like
oh.
ultimately, because she's still, and like when you see her when she actually she becomes a princess, but she has a restaurant. She's not like just like sitting in the back like chilling with her feet kicked up. She's like serving people and out in the front. She still believes. She still held on to like her morals of hard work. Where I'm like, that's like kind of a like I think the strongest thing about her, maybe she's the strongest thing here is that her character, like she does have like a lot of integrity and is like a strong character that like no, this is what I believe, and I'm not gonna deviate from that. And she stuck to that for the whole movie. She stuck to her morals, which is a good message. So I didn't even think about that till you just said it. Like that, yeah, that is sort of like a sweet way to end it off, like with her.
so what's racist about the princess and the frog?
Tawny, take it away.
So again, as I do not have and prior to very recent experiences, do not have much insight into Black American culture, just like firsthand, other than what I see in popular media. Um, it didn't occur to me. Like I really just didn't even register. So in my reading, I came across a couple of things. And I'll talk about the one. So I don't want to talk about the Firefly because I love that Firefly. and honestly, and honestly, when I watched that movie, it didn't occur to me. And I kept reading like, oh, it's a lower class, Black person, and I was like, he said he's Cajun. I thought he was a white guy.
That's what I was saying. Like, is
I
he
thought that Firefly
black?
was white for
I thought he
sure.
was
Like,
white too.
yeah, and he says he's Cajun, and I had always understood Cajun to mean, well, part of Cajun identity was white, but I don't know, maybe I just don't know. So I won't talk about the Firefly because the Firefly doesn't bother me. The thing and we talked about this a second ago is Naveen. Like, what is going on? Naveen is like it's an Indian or Southeast Asian. I'm sorry if I'm using the wrong terms, but like Naveen Andrews, right? He's, but he's from a made up country that I can't remember the name, like Maldonia or Mal something. That's supposed to be like, if you like the people that have actually tried to figure out where this country is, it looks like it's maybe like in the Mediterranean or something. And he's a Brazilian actor. Like the voice actor's Brazilian. I don't know what that accent is in the movie. Like, what
Yeah,
is that?
weird. Yeah,
It's terrible. I don't I don't even know if that's that guy's real accent, but it sounds like I don't even know what to make of it.
Yeah.
And I'm so one of my pet peeves in movies, just like we talked about bad child actors, there's three things. Okay? Three things that I cannot get past. Bad child actors, bad wigs. The whole time I'm watching that's a wig, that's a wig, that's a wig, that's a wig.
I
That's
have
all I
that
can do.
bad. Don't ever watch a
And
Tyler Perry movie.
and bad accent. Those three things are so distracting to me that I can't even focus on what the movie is a lot of the time. And that's where I was with Naveen. And there was this whole question of like, originally he was white, but then he was black, and then he's now God knows what he is. And so a lot of the criticism, or some of the criticism that I found, at least most that I could sort of identify with or feel, was this idea that like, why not make him a black prince? Like, why not make him Like, do you then, like, do you sort of walk into the trap of like, okay, well, which country in Africa is he from, and how do we get this right? Or like, which West Indian island is he from, and now how do we get this right? And so maybe they're trying to avoid that, so they
It's
make
not that
something
hard though.
Yeah.
It seems harder to do all the stuff that they did.
And that's the thing. It's like, I don't know what that would be like to have to make those decisions. I feel like whatever they did would have been wrong on some level. Like there would have been something in there.
Yeah.
And it's not, and I'm not even saying that's bad. I'm saying that is the moment of history we're in. And that's what I keep, like, this is why we have this show. It's not because we're like, that's bad and evil and those people are bad. It's like, let's look at where we've been. Like, let's look at where we've been and talk about how to get better.
He is a confusing character. Like when I first saw him, I was like, damn, that dude brown. Like he's very brown looking. But I was like confused because like you said, I don't know what accent that is. And I was like, okay, is he white? Like his features are white. His skin is much like darker than, some of like the white
He's like
people.
my color at least, right?
Yeah,
Like
he's very
pretty
brown. Yeah, he's very brown.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. I mean, again, why not have him be just a black? Because you don't even have to explain what countries he's from. Like, you made up a country for this guy. What difference does it make? Like, where if it was a black prince, like he's from blah blah whatever Zamunda. Who cares? He's from nowhere.
I was gonna say the same thing. Zamunda.
He's from anywhere. Yeah, he's from. It doesn't even matter. Like you're making up countries anyway. Like what difference does it make? Like
yeah, like
that's not even
that wasn't your hang up.
Yeah, that's
but
not,
maybe it does to the people who are trying to figure out if they're going to be upsetting. Like maybe.
Well,
maybe
you see right there. Like I think that's the problem. Like what you're saying is the problem. I was looking at who wrote this movie and who directed it, and it's the same guys that direct a lot of the Disney movies. The two guys, I can't remember their names. It's like John Musker and Ron Clement.
Yeah.
They do like a lot of like, I mean, I think they did Moana, Aladdin, like Little Mermaid. Like they've done like a ton of like the Disney movies, like of directing. And I think they did some screenwriting for this. I did find that there was one black, I think a black guy that wrote that has this credited as a screenwriter on this as well. So it's those two and then him, and I don't know how much he contributed to it, but they had one black guy listed as a screenwriter and two white guys writing a movie set in Louisiana and New Orleans that's heavily,
in the Jim Crow era.
Yeah,
right? Like,
and it's set in a why are you guys writing this? Like, and again, I don't know who wrote what. I have no clue. I just know that they directed it, and they are obviously both listed as screenwriters, and so is this black guy. But it's like, why are y'all in charge of this movie? This is just an odd movie, and maybe you wouldn't be so uncertain or unsure of what to do with Naveen or how to, portray these characters if you had more representation. Like, it's not like, I think again, and to be fair, it is 2009. We weren't ultra woke yet. Like, so I get it.
We should have. Disney could have done. I just feel like Disney should have known a little better on this one. Like, just pull some people in. Like pull some people in and listen to them and ask them like, how could we fuck this up?
Yeah,
because we don't want to do that.
Yeah, because you could easily like, and listen, I'm not saying that like nobody can tell anybody else's story. I'm not saying that because I don't think that that's true. I think anyone can get inspiration and tell a story brilliantly about someone else of another culture, as long as they respect and understand, what they're getting into and what the culture is. So it's not that they're white and they can't tell a black story. It's just you clearly maybe got hung up on some things and you didn't know what to do while writing a story about this black character, to where maybe having more than just one black screenwriter, and that's all who's credited. I don't know who else worked on it, but
Also, just like what we were like last week when we talked about, it's not even so much this one particular narrative, it's that in the absence of other narratives, and other narratives where Black people tell their own stories, like it's more problematic than it would be if more Black people had access to the platform that Disney does, or like even half of that level of platform. That's kind of what it's the context again, that like, how does Disney even do this without it being problematic on some level?
I mean, and they, like, there's Black people everywhere. Like, if you wanted to, like, I guess that's what's in my head is like, okay, I'm thinking about Aladdin and Jasmine. I'm thinking about literally most, aside from Pocahontas, which we don't even have to get into right now. Most pairings are of people of the same race, and I get maybe they wanted to go interracial to sort of check off another box, but why would you just make him racially ambiguous then? Like why wouldn't you just pick something?
He's
then?
Not anything,
right? Like this. So it's like
he's filling out the census. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, like they did that, and it's like that was weird. I mean, they show his parents at the end, and like it would have been interesting if he had like a white mom and a Black dad or something, and it's like, oh, okay, he's biracial, whatever. But they don't even do that. The parents are also racially ambiguous, so you're just like, all right, man, I just don't know.
We are human.
Right, we are your standard human.
We are standard human.
Yeah, how hard it would have been. Like, you could cast Chiwetel Ejiofor and he's from England. You could, and he's Black. Like, you don't have to be. They wouldn't have even had to have it be like, an African prince or whatever. They could have. Like I said, there's Black people everywhere. So it's just, of all the things you could do,
you kind of could just make him be from anywhere.
Right.
He could be from Australia if you want him to be. Like, it doesn't really matter.
Well, I just found something that might help a little bit, in that the voice actor combined a French accent with his own Brazilian accent to make up a Maldonian.
I was gonna say it sounded
accent. That doesn't help me.
I mean,
yeah, I was gonna say it sounded slightly French.
It's objectively wrong. So, like, but now we at least know what he was trying to do.
Look, he went to school in England. Slap an English accent on him. Let's not have to deal with that. Yeah, fake accents. Like, I'm over at this point.
So can we also talk about, just for a minute? This is a kind of a shift, but I want to get this in. Can we talk about this kind of decision that these, kids movies are making, where you have your Black lead character turn into some creature for most of your movie? Because, like,
yeah, okay,
so I remember when this movie came out, that actually was a conversation where it was like, oh, you have your first Black Disney princess, and you have her a frog most of the movie. That wasn't the case, with anybody before that. It's awful weird that that's the case, but you could write it off as like, okay, yeah, they decided to do Princess and the Frog and put a fun twist on it, and that's what they did. But then they had the Will Smith movie, I think it was last year, called Spies in Disguise, and he turned into a bird.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is another movie. My kids love that one too. And there's another one coming out that Pixar's doing, I think, that's called Soul.
Soul, yeah.
And, with Jamie Foxx.
Yeah, and Jamie Foxx plays this, jazz guy who falls into a place and turns into a thing. And it's kind of weird because you have these studios who very rarely even use Black lead characters. And so when you do, you can almost, like, a lot. It's that's only 3 things I'm thinking of, but 3 things out of how many movies do they make where they have Black leads? And in those cases, they're all turning into some sort of animal or creature, so they don't get to live in their Black skin through most of it. So I guess what that brought up for me was, like, again, this otherness of, like, we need to treat this character differently, and their story it involves them not being human. And I don't honestly think that was intentional. Like, I don't think people are like, yeah, this is going to be a story about somebody turning into something, so we should make it a Black person. I don't think that's the route.
Yeah.
But I do think there's something in this, like, idea that our stories telling stories with Black people inherently means creating an otherness element, just subconsciously, even. And
I
so
mean,
I just, yeah, wanted to bring that forward too.
no, for sure. And I think that what that sort of is indicative of is that white people are telling these stories largely. And maybe there's discomfort around, like, I don't know how to deal with this or how to treat it. And so it turns like it's, I'm not,
It's easy to
again,
write stories about animal people.
yeah. And I'm using whiteness as a shorthand, okay, for like the dominant culture. I don't literally mean that you have fair skin. But yeah, like I think there's a deep discomfort around, and I liked what Miles said earlier. I was just listening to a podcast about do like who can tell what stories, right? And it's not that we can't ever say that, like, it's just seems so extreme and ridiculous to say, like, unless you match this person's identity exactly, you can't tell a story about them. The way, like, humans make meaning by telling stories. What the problematic pieces are is who's telling the stories. And when historically you've had one group telling all the stories for everyone, then we kind of want to push back against that a little bit, right? Like, we want to say, like, hey, think about this before you put it out there as a narrative that is true about people. Um, and I think, as we've noted, like, Disney has become more woke in a lot of ways than, and they're kind of, if you watch, like, even like the Disney Junior shows and all the like tween sort of shows, like, there's a real effort at representation, and it's done in the sort of cotton candy Disney way, but there's like a wokeness that's happening right now, that I think maybe in prior times made people a lot more comfortable, like made people who were trying to be woke and were trying to be aware a lot more uncomfortable about telling stories that were not their own, or that would maybe not be considered their own.
If you're going to tell this story, then you need to be honest in telling this story, because the moment you remove the honesty and you put in just your perspective specifically, well, whose perspective is this? Because if you're telling this from your perspective, then like we automatically are offended by this. It's offensive because it's like, well, that's not necessarily true. Like, look at this movie specifically, where like, is it Facilier? Is that how you say his name, Facilier?
I say, when I say
He's like this.
when I talk about him with my kids, I say facilier because I just assume that was like
That's what I said too, because it
yeah, the
was like
French
New Orleans.
pronunciation. But I'm sure in English it'd be like, I don't think it. I don't know. Do they ever say
Yeah,
his name in the movie, or do they just call him the chef?
It's
I
on
think
the
so.
gravestone, but I can't remember.
Yeah.
That's about it. Like, we don't get to hear it. Yeah, I assumed it was like a French word.
But like even that character where it's like, I'm like, what the hell, man? Like, it's like he's like, he's like, even the setting, like, listen, I understand it's in Louisiana, it's in New Orleans, I get it. In America, we all have these stereotypes that are regional. They're not always racist, like all racial. Sometimes they're regional. And we need these to identify people from specific places. If you're from New Orleans, then we assume that you eat po' boys and like crawfish, and you're Cajun and you talk this way. And yeah, there's some people like that. And if you're from New York, we assume you got the New York accent, or Boston or whatever. Like, we make these assumptions based upon region. But there's a lot of decisions made in this movie where I'm like, all right, come on, man. Like, I've met quite a few people from the deep south, from Louisiana. They don't sound like that, all of them. Like, they
He
don't
doesn't
necessarily
even.
talk.
Yeah, and he's interesting because he just talks like Keith David. Like, he doesn't have an accent really. Like, he almost,
Yeah, just
and
like, not even specifically him as accent, but just like supporting characters in that region. Just the vibe of like, well, it's Louisiana, it's New Orleans, so we gotta have some, some jazz playing, like some whatever, like the vibe, and voodoo having, like, it's just like that. Why does he have voodoo
we
powers?
should
Like, what?
probably talk
Like that.
about that. That's another one of the ones where I was like, okay, yeah, okay.
Like, again, I get it. It's New Orleans, and like, listen, we've heard these stereotypes. We've all heard these regional and racial stereotypes that are attached to people from specific places. And it's like, why does he have to be some voodoo guy though? Like, just like that's such a odd, even for Disney specifically. Like voodoo, really? Like that's like,
Right. Using
yeah,
voodoo
that was,
as yeah, and it's kind of insidious, like the idea that because you got voodoo is not inherently like it's religion and voodoo and hoodoo, and he uses both interchangeably when he's talking. Um, that's, I mean, to apply that to your villain in the movie in your first black Disney animated film, as the evil thing is that he uses voodoo, is putting forth an you're applying something that is traditionally tied to an African spirituality, imposing it as an evil thing, and that's some would argue because you have what's her name, Mama Odie.
Mama Odie.
Yeah, Mama Odie also kind of uses a version of African spiritualism, but they more distinctly tie the voodoo hoodoo title to him.
Well,
And
and they use that imagery, right? Like that mask,
yeah,
sort of
goat
tribal mask
skull, and but
imagery.
like there's this thing of like, well, wait a minute, like if we had decided, the bad guy in a Disney movie was Christian, and that was kind of using, I don't know, Jesus powers or something
Hey,
in
have
an
you seen
walking
evil,
on water
have you seen the
powers.
right?
Hunchback of Notre Dame? I was
Well,
just talking about that with my kids today. They're like, "Oh, his religion's bad." I go, "Well, that's Catholicism, and I was raised Catholic, and I had this whole conversation with my kids about like, yeah, he calls himself Christian, so we had this conversation about like calling yourself something doesn't actually mean anything, it's your behavior. But they do call Mama Odie the Voodoo Queen of the Bayou. So if I think the use of the tribal masks was questionable, um, I think there was an effort to show that voodoo or hoodoo or however they use it in the movie is not in of itself necessarily an evil, but that there are like dark and light sides to it. And that's maybe just me, like with my like the other things I've read in my life, like projecting that. I don't know that that's necessarily so obvious, maybe to somebody.
I think that's like the purpose of her character was almost to give balance to the idea that voodoo is neither good or evil. It's simply the person manipulating it that is deciding whether or not it's perceived to be good or bad.
how do we rate The Princess and the Frog based on all that we know?
My kids like it. It's fun. I think overall the positives outweigh the negatives. So it's a solid solid. I am at peace with this sort of movie. But again, I want to acknowledge, having never had to carry the weight of being black in America, I don't necessarily get to make that call. But that's how I feel.
Yeah. Um, I think like you said, like it's kind of I don't have like super gripes with it. Like it's not the worst case. Like you said, like it could have been worse. Like, and that's true. It could have been. For me though, like I feel like there are stronger like movies that show a strong like black female lead role that I would feel like that I'm a little more proud of. That I feel like a little more like okay, this is what I want to show like my daughter, or even my son, so that he can see. Because it's not just about
Yeah.
little girls seeing this; it's about boys seeing this as well, so they can like get whatever type of ideas they have in their mind about what a relationship is supposed to be between them and a or whatever they are. Like it just it's cool for that. Like, but I think there's better films to watch if you like really want. I mean, I know this is a big deal for Disney. It ultimately did not end up being a big deal for me or my family. Like we tried to make it a big deal more than it actually turned out to be. So for that, I mean, I'd say like I could take it or leave it, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's hard for me to, as a black man and as a father of three black boys, like not notice or not remark in my head that Disney had an opportunity to have a black male prince and decided not to. I think it's a beautifully made movie. I think again, it's something that my boys enjoy, but I think I'm more in the boat with Miles in the sense of like, yeah, I could take it or leave it. It'll never hold a special place in my heart as much as I wish it did. And so, but it doesn't deeply offend me. It's just like kind of whiffed it there, a little bit of a foul ball. Like you hit, you made contact.
That's
Yeah.
gotta be an official rating. Kind of whiffed it there.
Yeah.
Perfect.
That's even worse than it like being good or bad. Is it's just kind of like blasé, like
And the blasé of it is not even to me tied to the quality of the film. It's more so tied to what it meant.
the impact.
Yeah,
What it was
what the
supposed to
impact should be.
versus maybe what it did or didn't mean.
Yeah, and
And maybe we're putting too much pressure on like it having impact because it's the first, and like maybe that's unfair.
And
But
that fucking says something though. Like I always think there's that like I think it's an Eddie Murphy joke where he's like talking about and this is I'm sorry if this isn't appropriate, but he's talking about like when you wait a long time to like have sex with someone for the first time, like damn, what is that cracker? Like they give you a cracker, you're so hungry they give you a cracker. And you're like, is that a Ritz? Like a little bit about how desperate you are. Do you guys know that joke? It's so funny
Yeah.
when he
yeah,
but like
oh my
every
gosh,
time
yeah,
because of the way
yeah.
but yeah, no,
And
but
you
like
just
for
you just
sure,
take it because it's like, all right. I mean,
that's how I feel. I got dragged to every movie that starred a fucking person from Latin America for my entire childhood.
yeah,
It was like my grandma was like, we're going to see this movie. We get one of them a year. Like,
well, it's like,
yeah, and that's like that's our own internal thing that we're projecting on it. We need it to be something special, when the reality is while like the majority of movies that come out are like mostly casted with predominantly white cast. There's a lot of those that are great, but there's a lot of those that are mediocre as well, and some that are terrible. So it's just more of them. So yeah,
just like
it's like
sorry,
yeah, the number. So there's less of these. So when one comes out, it's like, okay, we only got this one, so it needs to be really good, like special. And then it ends up just being like one of the mediocre ones. Like, damn, I mean, well, we're not gonna get another one for
right.
like a couple years. So I don't know. Let's go watch Black
Yeah,
Panther.
like that's
It's
the
like a
thing
better
too. It's
movie.
like,
It's like
I was gonna
more
say,
for everything.
at least, and I'm not even black, but I'm like, at least we got Black Panther.
Let's go watch Black Panther. Like you want to see some female characters that
Oh
are
man, yeah.
impressive, that are independent, that are strong, that are like impressive, just humans in general. Go watch that. Don't watch this. Go watch Black Panther. Like,
so this is none of our favorite movie, and it's not super duper racist. This is a good old like 5 out of 10.
a hard five,
Right, a
solid five.
solid 5.
A hard 5 isn't that like a contradiction in terms?
Right.
No, right?
It's an oxymoron. Yeah,
A
like
hard 5.
this is aggressively
hard
average.
Yes.
Yeah. But let us know what you think of The Princess and the Frog. Where does it sit for you? Have you even considered some of the things about it that are problematic? Or is this one of your favorite Disney movies? Let us know in the comments, and please be sure to share this video, subscribe, and follow our content. Next week, we are going to go reach a little bit further back again and do more of a classic movie, and possibly have I think maybe more challenging conversation. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.